Like Shweta said, I'm going to be talking about illustration and visual thinking as an engagement tool in research. First, I'm going to talk a bit about what visual thinking is, the benefits of using visualizations in research, and then I'm going to walk you through some of examples of my work and how these help different research teams and organizations to communicate more effectively. This is not working.
It's the same thing.
No, it's a different one.
There you go. I carry on like that. Sure. Yeah. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Colombia, and my background is in industrial design. I studied back in Colombia, and then in 2004 I moved to the UK, and later in around 2009 I did a MA in graphic design and illustration. I work at the company called Future Shifts Catapult, which is an organization that accelerates urban ideas to make cities better. And they do this by bringing together businesses, universities, and city leaders, and they all combine work together on all the challenges that cities are facing right now and in the future. And my role, what my business card says, is illustrator and visual communication designer. So to explain you a little bit more what it is in a more engaging way, I see myself as a chef. So you might be thinking, but what has cooking anything to do with visualization? So I'm going to explain you why. When you cook a special meal, you have a set of ingredients, and when you put together, the end result is always more than the parts, because you discover new flavors, and even in the presentation-wise, the way the dish looks is much more better than the part alone. When we talk about research, it works. Visualization in research, it works in a very similar way. So we have all these ingredients that the researchers give us, or give me in this case. The 10 million post-it notes, the diary studies, contextual interviews, and all the rich data they have collected, and then they give it to me and they want me to visualize it. And visualization, when it's visualized, it ends up being better than the parts, because you discover new connections, you start to see the rich picture, you can stand back, see the big picture, and you see, you even discover new insights. To give you even further evidence of why the similarity and the metaphor between cooking and research, this is how a room looks like when they ask me to come and help them visualize something. And I say, oh my God, where do I start? All these colors, all these post-it notes. How many days do we have? 1 half day. And then when you're going to cook a special meal as a chef, you walk into the supermarket and this is what you find, which looks fairly similar. And then you have all these very lovely ingredients that individually are very rich, equally like in research. Every single post-it note has an important insight, but then you have to think, what of those ingredients I'm going to take together to cook the perfect visualization? So that is where the similarity appears. But before I carry on, why is visualizing so important? Why is it so engaging? Because we are visual beings. We use our visual sense to interact with the world that is around us. And nowadays we all have a device in our pocket and we're bombarded by information constantly. So about 75% of the information that comes to us is through our eyes, and the other 25% of the information comes through the other different senses. And what happens here is all this information gets stored in our head and combines in the form of memories and experiences that later, when we face a new situation or a new challenge, or we're presented with new information, we use this previous experiences to interpret this new information. So the main learning here is that the more visual the input we put, the more likely we are to remember and learn from it, and that is what is key in research. Going back to our metaphor, I would like to think that the research business is like opening a restaurant. So we have our customer, the everyday guy who works hungry, looking for a place to eat. And by the way, he always has the final say on whether the product is good or not. And he represents our users or participants in the research. Then we have the restaurant owner and the staff. And then as researchers, when they open in the restaurant, they already know a bit about the market. They probably know which other restaurants they have in the area, who the competitors are, perhaps which sort of cuisine is missing in that area, so they already have some clues. But they need to approach the customers, get closer to them to really understand what they want to eat and how they like it to be cooked in order to finally sell the product. And these are the research team. Then for those who watch MasterChef, you probably know who this is. Well, I'll try to. This is our food critique. I guess you already know who it represents. He is a client because he has very high expectations, he is very picky, and he claims to be an expert, or is an expert. And then finally, as part of this story, we got the general public, which represent the partners and other stakeholders that will get involved later once the client has accepted or he likes the research, and then he will share with partners and other stakeholders will make the product happen. Something you probably haven't noticed is I'm talking about myself as a chef, but I'm known in this story. I don't appear there, but if you think about the real situation of a restaurant, you never really meet the chef. The chef is always in the kitchen, unless your meal was extremely bad. Then you get to meet the chef. But you don't get to. What you get to see is what he cooks, is what he puts in front of you to engage with the restaurant. So I'm going to start by talking. I haven't said much about what engagement is, so I'm going to start talking about how these different parts connect. And the first one is going to be how users engage with the research team. And like I said before, this is where I come in. So here, this stage engagement is all about building interest, encouraging, and giving an incentive.
Can you take it just a little bit further away from your mouth?
Okay.
Just
nervous.
No, you're great. Keep going.
So engagement here is about creating, inspiring, encouraging, and making people get interested about your research. So the metaphor here is you walk up to the restaurant with some samples, and then you start giving them away. You start to get initial reactions from the users, and then you can perhaps even send staff around the houses and put leaflets through the door with a discount or 2 for 1. So exactly like in research, we always give an incentive for people to come and tell us what they think about the product we are about to develop. So some examples of my work. This is stimulus material, which is done for focus groups. So in this particular case, the client already had in mind a couple of ideas, but they wanted to put them out there and validate them and get real feedback from real users. So we came up with making real stories as scenarios, and we took them to real contextual interviews, and we presented to them to gather feedback. And here's a short clip of how that worked. But basically, we took this to the real contextual interviews, and they had mainly two great benefits. One was it's a great icebreaker. People engage much better than if you try to tell them a story. They tend to think that they're part of the story because you're talking to them as participants. So they immerse themselves into the storyboard, and they tell them what would really happen in that situation. So that is where the engagement starts. Then we have examples like this, where I create a live scribe, a profile of the persona, or of the participant, and they can see it happening in front of the eyes. So again, this is great for breaking the ice, getting people comfortable, and they engage much more in conversation and participate more and give more real insight than in other cases. This is another example. Again, the client, in this case, they have very early ideas of wireframes, and they wanted to test them with participants. So we created this sort of, let's say, visual matrix, and we were populating it together as we went along. And when they see that things are coming together in front of their eyes, they feel like they've been part of the design. What they're saying really, really counts. We're not just taking data and taking minutes, but we're actually working together towards developing a product. Here's another video of a co-creation session. So this is happening live. You can see the user is, the participant is on the other side, and basically he's helping with his insights and his knowledge of other services to design this particular service. So as you can see, basically he's telling me how he will imagine, how will he envisage a product to be. And I have to say that by no means this is going to be the end result. What we're trying to do here is to read between the lines and see what sort of features they want to see. Then there will be work of the UI designers and other people to actually design this in the right way. But it's a great way to construct something together and get a real input on what they want to see and how they imagine the product to be in the future. Now moving on to the second part of engagement. This is between the research team and the client. And then here again. So at this stage, engagement is about impressing and making the whole experience memorable. And when I say impressing, it's not about cooking a very lovely dish that is tasteless. It's about picking up the right ingredients and presenting it in a way that will make the client or the critique come back to a restaurant and write more positive reviews about our business. This is an example of co-creation sessions with clients. So we lock ourselves in a room, and then we take all this lovely research that all the researchers have collected through months of work, and we start to produce real ideas. We start to generate initial concepts of how the product could be, and then again, similarly with the participants, with the clients, they engage much more. They have a real say, and they can see the progress from the actual research field work into something more tangible. This is a project done for the city of Dubai, and the key here is mostly in the company I work, all of the projects are futuristic. So it's the view of cities 5, 10, 20 years down the line. So it's very hard to communicate how these services or these concepts that we initiate and are gonna be in the future. So storyboarding, it's great to explain this sort of research, and it's a great tool to engage with clients and tell them about how the products are gonna be. Going to personas, like you were talking before, so we can generate these dashboards, and we can go as far as we want. We can go to the granularity of it, and then we can start to spot different things like the main challenges, their behaviors, the key scenarios, and these are great tools for clients. They put them in their research teams, and they put them on the walls, and then they constantly kind of feedback on who the users are, and can see exactly the products are really matching what the initial researchers say. Another great tool is creating the research stages, recording the research stages. So this is basically showing where we started and what has been produced towards the end. And then it's a great summary of the whole research. Instead of giving a report with 100 pages, you can give this, and they can easily spot what is the process from day one until the final deliverable. This is a recent project. We work with Anya and Raf as well. It's a project about this ambulance service in Liverpool, and we were looking at ways to optimize the service. So what we did is they collected all the information. They went and they had interviews. They went on an ambulance as well, and they collected information from paramedics, from all the actors in this journey. We map them out and then create a whole journey from the moment the call is made all the way to when the patient is taken to the hospital. And then we started to map out all the quotes from real participants and also all the positives and negatives found throughout the research. So you can start to see certain patterns, and it's a much more readable and understanding journey. Here's a picture of Anya presenting it, and like I said, it's a great tool when you put it on the wall. Everyone is involved, everyone is participating, and everyone is on the same page, which is always very important when you do these workshops. This was done for Tesco. This is to demonstrate. Often we give only the findings to the client, but we don't tell them where we got them from, and we don't show all the hard work that all the researchers have done. So this is a great way to say, well, look, we actually spent all this time, we interviewed all this amount of people, we did 20 home visits. So it's great to show all this rich insight, this rich flavor that we want to show in our dish is coming from. Then we went further, and then we created user journeys based on the real participants, and then we started to spot what the problem was, all the way until what the solution and the benefits could be. And the next stage, we started to generate initial sort of conceptual, let's say, wireframes. They're not really wireframes, but it's a great way to start to highlight which features should be in that page, what is exactly what we want to see in each step of the journey. And finally, this one, it was more about the client wanted to show internally to the other departments the work they're doing in a more like sort of flashy and engaging way. So they didn't want to go for the typical sort of infographic. They wanted to show something more like almost like an advertisement campaign internally. So they wanted to show how the BBC store works. So we came out with the idea of creating the planets, and then you can see that you can start to tell a story, and it's a much more fun way to tell research rather than the 100 pages report. And finally, the client engages with partners and other stakeholders. So this is basically the last stage. The client is happy with what the research has shown, and he is happy to share it with other partners and stakeholders for further stages of the research. And then here I come in. The engagement here is about sharing and getting others involved. So as you can see, in every stage, engagement has appeared in a different way, but the ultimate goal is always to involve, get people interested, and encourage them to be part of the research. We can, for instance, create research, live scribe part of it, and then we can even go on social media and start to show what is the updates, what is happening with research, and it's a great way to keep people updated on what's happening. We can create sort of posters that, like I showed before with the ambulance project, they tell a story. You can bring all the people that have been part of the project, and they can really see what the results of the stories are. We can create many types of deliverables. We can create coffee books, cards. I mean, you can be as creative as you can. Always try to not always cook the same way, but always kind of create the plate in a more different way. And finally, just to sum up, this is what for me the keys to engage visually are. So one is the research stage. Is not knowing exactly at what part of the research you are. So the visualization is not going to be the same if you do it for a participant than if you do it for a client. So it's almost like who you're going to cook for. Is it the participant, is it the restaurant owner, or is it the stakeholders? Then the message is about the ingredients. So what ingredients are you going to pick in the supermarket to make this dish rich? We've got the audience again, so who are you going to cook for? Is it the main user, the client again? So always have in mind the audience in order to visualize something. And then finally the style. So the style, I mean, you could go for something more like street food style, or you want something very elaborate and polished. It's up to you. It depends on the type of client you are working with. If it's more corporate, perhaps it was a different type of visualization, but if it's a more sort of creative agency, you can go for more like a sketchy type of style. And that's it for me. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you do this sketching? Not just pen and paper, but do you use any software? Which kind of software?
Well, I think, like I said before, it depends on which stage you are. So if you are kind of starting to talk to the participants, sometimes it's a contextual interview, so taking any equipment is quite hard work. So I start with sort of pen and paper, and then you scribe, and then you can scan and do all sorts of things, Photoshop stuff. When it's in lab sessions, I use a Wacom tablet, and then I try to visualize everything on the go, which makes it more efficient because you can edit things. Things change in a workshop. I mean, even if you visualize something, then immediately one of the clients is saying something else, you have to kind of edit it then and there. But I think the answer is it depends on which stage you're doing it, and it's almost what you feel more comfortable with as well.
Thank you. Is there another hand?
Over there.
Hey, so I know you work with one of my fellow organisers, Anya. So how do you work together to kind of create the message? So you had that beautiful story that Anya was presenting. How do you kind of come together to work out what's the right thing that you want to show?
Ooh, that's a very interesting question. I have to say good things here.
Some arguments.
You can say bad things too.
No.
Well, I guess, we've been working for quite a long time together, and I think it's been sort of like a learning process as well. She kind of understands already what I'm expecting from her on a brief, and the other way as well. I know what she's expecting in terms of visuals. I think it all depends. The most important thing is the brief, is how well you brief me.
Okay.
Obviously, I work in sort of UX and in research for a couple of years, so I already have an understanding. Unlike other illustrators that work in different more like artistic areas, they struggle a bit to grasp the concept. Whereas for me, it's a bit easy because I've been doing kind of constantly. But it's all about the brief and I think trying to have fun. I mean, working with Anya is fantastic. So that whole kind of fun factor makes it really easy to engage.
But I think just to add to that, so I think it's not only like getting a brief, because I see Felipe more as a partner in the research, because like he said, he worked for a long time in the field. So whenever I'm like, what can we do with this? How can I solve this? He usually has an idea on how to solve it or how to approach it differently. So it's not that I come with a solution and say, hey, Felipe, do it like this. So he's not just somebody who executes, but he has really good ideas. So
I think Felipe is a bit of a rare special ingredient.
Yes, definitely.
Any more questions?